in an effort to make sure the other person in the relationship knows that my feelings are right or my opinion is right or the way I think it should go is right, I can damage the relationship. More important is the connection. With kids, if they feel safe and tended to and heard, it changes the way. There always going to be resistance between a parent and a child because part of their development is individuation. That's what they have to do. They have to individuate if they're ever going to get out of the house and have a life. Right. But if they don't feel safe, they're going to try to push back and individuate with everything. And that can damage the relationship irreparably. As opposed to letting them know they're safe and loved no matter what they do and who they are.
Has work taken center stage in your life and you feel disconnected from what you truly care about? Are you doing all the things that you, quote, should be doing and still dread facing the day? On this episode of That's a Great Point, we have special guest, Master Certified Coach David Taylor-Klaus, another one of my favorite people. DTK shares with us how living the should life had him contemplating the 5 best ways to kill himself. We learn how he went from feeling sick to his stomach when he turned his office doorknob to creating a life where his adult children want to spend time with him. In this episode, we cover doing things that scare us, choosing a mindset that serves us, dealing with the swirl of negative thoughts, the bite that fits the wound, being right versus being in relationship, addictive and stimulation seeking behavior, and much more. To find out more about David and his work, check out the links in the show description. And as always, if you find our content helpful, please share it with somebody you love. Thanks for playing along. Enjoy. Welcome to That's a Great Point, the attitude adjustment for your soul, where co-hosts Elena Doran, Michelle Albers, and Lee Smart discuss deep topics around a life well lived. Let's start the show.
It still looks pretty enormous. So, but you could tell it's a microphone.
Still very dong-like.
It is. It's very phallic. I've had enough people tell me that it's phallic that I've accepted it.
You get external validation, so everything feels good now?
If you have external validation, it must be true, right?
It must be true.
Do you know what? They just have microphone envy.
I don't think that's what Freud called it.
I don't think so either.
Close. Close, but no cigar.
I'd say close
that
like
was sitting
this,
right there. Well done.
Right? Close, but no cigar. But what is a cigar?
All right, but if you're making dad jokes, that's a faux pas because you're not a dad. Okay, we'll let it go.
I'm like, I play one on TV.
All right, boys and girls, what are we playing with today?
I'm feeling the need to stay silent because this is fun.
I worry when you get quiet.
Who's to say it won't be fun if you join in the party?
Yeah.
Yeah, so where do we start? Dadgum. So much we could be talking about. How about we start with the basics? DTK, care to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what it is you do in the world?
So I had an interview once where the guy who was interviewing me was all about work and performance and achievements. And he had this whole long bio for me and he wanted me to introduce myself. And my favorite way to introduce myself is what I did with him, which is to stymie that whole, misalignment. So the best way to introduce myself is I've been a husband for 33 years, a father for 30 years. I am an avid cyclist. Oh, I can't forget. I'm also a son. My mom gets really pissed when she listens to the podcast and I leave out son. So my greatest accomplishments are I'm married to a woman I've known since I was 11. And we have raised a family of 3 hysterical children who are all active part of our lives to this day. And that for me is my greatest accomplishment. Right? I mean, during the day, what I get paid for is I my work is reintroducing successful entrepreneurs and senior executives to their families.
Mhm.
So I work with those folks who are very much like I was, totally over-calibrated towards work, so much so that they tend to drift away from what's really important to them, getting to that point where they're so torn, they're sort of lost on the inside. And so I get to work with them before the lost on the inside destroys marriages, families, work, etc., and try to bring them back to that values-based alignment.
One of my favorite parts about our time together is one of the things that endeared me to you more than anything else, I think, in the time we've spent together is whenever I was spending some time one-on-one with you and you were talking to your kids on the phone, and there was a genuine love between y'all that I remember, love you, Dad. You know, some families, they'll say, I love you, but it's kind of like, yeah, I love you just habitually. This was such an enthusiastic I love you. You knew, I knew like this was fucking real. And man
Thank you.
alive, not so practice what you preach, right? Uh, because I don't have anywhere I was going with that. It's just one of the things that I absolutely love about it. And that's why I'm loving you, man. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And I actually feel sorriest for our 24-year-old son because my wife and I both became coaches when he was about 6. So he's just been indoctrinated from early on. But it makes a difference. It's, we've tried to teach the kids to be really intentional about being present to what they're saying and meaning it so they're not getting caught up in just the inanity that we all did growing up of saying what's appropriate or what's the automated expectation. And it makes a difference in how we see them interact with their friends and the rest of our family. And they're 24, 28, and 30. And our daughter-in-law's 36. So we've got a spread. And it's wild to watch how they choose to be present in their world.
mm-hmm.
This coaching thing sounds like it works.
This shit might catch on,
I think somebody should do something about it.
right?
Isn't a lot of this work, I think, for folks who are steeped in the work of service, to not be a hypocrite.
Now keep going, Elena.
No, I'm like, no, that's it. There's nothing else. It's the challenge of continuing to clean your own instrument while being of service to others, because you are also a human and your lens will get crudted up and foggy and dirty with everyday life. And so continuing that work that is never ever done is so important. And that's what I hear you talk about, David, when you talk about your adult children who don't need to interact with you. They don't have to call you. They don't need things from you. They choose to call their parents because they like them and they love them. And then you get to watch how they interact with people in their lives. Again, like they now have agency. They're out of the house, they're out of the need phase. And so there's a continuous process of keeping yourself honest and practicing what you preach. You're going to say something and then I might have a question.
Somebody told us like 15 or 16 years ago, the best kept secret in personal development is coach training. It's like you said, you're constantly cleaning your own house. You do this work on yourself so you can do this work in the world. And one of the reasons we keep doing more and more training is because it always throws us back into our conscious incompetence and draws to light more crud on the lens, the way you said it, Alina. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Our eldest, our 30-year-old, is now halfway through coach training. They want to add coaching to their quiver of arrows. And our youngest, our 24-year-old, has just taken fundamentals. He's just done the first weekend of training. And it's fascinating to watch them reevaluate their world as they go through the training and as they get thrown into coaching other people. Because it's one thing to do to begin to do that work on yourself. Then you start engaging with someone in a professional capacity. And it's like, oh, whoa. Like, I can't tell you how many times they've already gotten off the phone with somebody and said, wait. Was that for them or was that for me? And realizing that so much of the engagement is also cleaning your own lens.
So how do you clean yours?
I guess tequila is not the best answer.
I mean, the true answer is probably the best one.
So the beautiful thing about doing this for so long is there are constantly opportunities provided to me. And whether it's a course, whether it's certification, a program, a group, and one of the best filters I have is if it makes my stomach turn over and my first response is hell no, that's probably what I need to be looking at. Because my somatic reaction is always going to be, oh, hell no, because I already know that it's going to be work and it's probably the work I need to be doing. So the word that came up is really weird, but the more violent that resistance, the more likely it is that's what I need to be doing. Yeah, Lee, I caught that. So I said they want to be doing. No, that was a need. That in order for me to get where I want to get, I need to do that. I really conscious about how external that sounds. But that it's fascinating. The more the resistance, the more it's the path for me.
So how do you decipher somatically between the resistance where you know you need to do the opposite? Like, oh, you say no, body. Well, it's a definite yes. Versus, oh, that's a no, like period, end of sentence.
So the distinction is to unpack nerve excitement, right? So the body doesn't. There's no physiological difference between being nervous and being excited. Right. So my job is to begin to unpack, okay, am I interpreting this physiological reaction as I'm nervous or I'm excited? Because if I feel resistance and I also feel if it translates as excitement, haha, that's a yes. Right. I go back to, and I think I shared this with you, Lee. Bruce Springsteen was interviewed by Variety magazine a bajillion years ago, and they asked him if he ever gets stage fright. And he said, no. But here's how I know it's time to go on stage, right? If my palms get a little sweaty and my pulse gets thready and my breath gets a little shallow, then I know it's time to go out on stage and rock. I'm like, he just described stage fright. So it's the same physiological reaction. It's how you experience it and what meaning you decide to put on it. So my job is to differentiate what's happening in the body.
So the body might give you the same response, and then your brain will decode.
Yeah. So when you said decode, what popped is, yeah, decode. And I could just decide, look, all meaning is made up anyway, right? Our body senses something and we attach meaning to it. Ta-da, so it's made up. So why not make up something that serves? So maybe it's just I'm reframing it that way, or maybe I'm actually discerning it. Don't know.
Yeah. I love it whenever people are like, oh, Pluto crossed over Mars. What does it mean? Well, it means whatever you want it to mean. What are the stories that you're telling yourself? So, how do we tell ourselves better stories as we're moving forward and noticing our bodily sensations?
Okay, the flippant answer is we choose. We choose to. Right? I don't. I think that's the real answer to how. We may have steps and mechanisms we use, but it comes down to choosing.
Yeah. Choose based on what?
Well, most of our choices are unconscious, right? So I think the trick to choosing something that will serve us moving forward is to be conscious about what we're choosing or not choosing, but being conscious to it. Because I think left to my own devices, I don't want to make this universal. Left to my own devices, I'm just going to roll on unconsciously. And I have 40 odd years of being unconscious before I really started paying attention and doing this work. So when I choose unconsciously, it doesn't usually serve.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Like how many times we may be learning and relearning a lesson. And no matter how many bumps and bruises and spiritual beatings over the head we sustain, sometimes we need more beatings.
Sometimes we just need to learn it again.
Yeah. How did all of this start for you? Because when you start this realm of coaching, when you started, it was not what it is today.
No, it started badly. Yeah.
I'd love to whatever
tell.
you care to share. Yeah, about your bad beginning.
I was my perfect client. I had a successful internet strategy and web development company. My business partner and I co-founded in 1995. Super early. It was really exciting. And around our 10th anniversary, which was just before Hurricane Katrina in 2005, I was lost. Every time I turned the doorknob to my office, my stomach turned. And I managed to convince myself for a good while that it was caffeine and spicy food. And by the way, when you give up caffeine and spicy food, you're removing so much of why it's fun to be alive. So I don't recommend that unless you actually have to. I didn't. That was just the lie I told myself. I had gotten to the point where I was so adrift from what was truly important to me. I was running the company that I thought I should. I was running it the way I thought I should. I was hiring the people I thought I should. I was pursuing and getting the clients I thought I should get. I was partnering with my business partner the way I thought I should. And holy shit, living the should life sucks. It is different from living the good life. And everything looked fabulous on the surface. You know, the house, the boat, the kids in private school, everything. And I was fucking miserable. And it came to a head on I-10 on the way on the way back into Atlanta out of a seminar my wife went to in Birmingham called Falling Awake. And I realized that weekend that the only thing I knew for sure were the 5 best ways to kill myself. I was done. I also realized that the universe has a wicked sense of humor. So the sky west of us is turning black. Hurricane Katrina is beginning to devour the Gulf Coast. And I'm looking in the rearview mirror and the side views and noticing how black it is behind us. I was like, ooh, that's a hell of a storm. And the voice I heard back was, yeah, but nothing like the one raging inside you. It's like, come on. So that was the tipping point for me. I got home. I did get a ticket on the way back too. That really sucked. I mean, the universe, like I said, the universe has a sense of humor. And I got home and I told my wife where I was. I did a lot of work the next few days trying to find a therapist that didn't suck. Did a lot of work in therapy. Also found a coach because I was really aware that therapy works with everything up until now. Drastic oversimplification. All my therapist friends forgive me, but therapy works with everything up to and including now, and coaching generally is now and everything forward. And so there's brilliant overlap in between, but they were very different arenas of work for me, and loved coaching. I grew up in a Jewish family. Of course, we love therapy too, right? But coaching made a huge difference. And I started to get clear about what I wanted to do. And over the next couple of years, it wasn't that technology company. And I thought I wanted to be a Vistage chair. I had been in Vistage for a number of years and started going down that path and realized it was more consulting and telling, and it wasn't enough collaborating and coaching and growing folks. So I figured, hey, we have coach training here in Atlanta. I'll go. My wife was about 10 months into her CTI coach training at that point. And my FOMO was screaming. It's like I was watching who she was becoming, and it was awesome. And then I realized, ooh, I want some of that. And then I also realized she's going to outgrow me, and she's going to outgrow me really quickly. And so I dove into the training that first weekend, and I was blown away. My consulting style over those last 15 years had been very coach approach style. I had no idea. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, there's a system and a structure and a profession and rules and tools and everything. This is great. And I went headlong. And I went through training and certification and more training, and it's been nonstop for 17 years. That was a really long answer to your question, Elena. Did I get what you were looking for?
It was just right.
There you go.
It was the perfect length answer.
See, Michelle, that's the external validation piece that we were talking about.
Am I
It is.
okay?
You got it.
Did
So
I
it
do
must
good?
be true.
Good. Affirmed. Yeah. This is that. I mean, a storm like that. First of all, I'm hearing like you should all over yourself, right? Like you should all over yourself, your life.
Professionally, yeah, it was great. I
And you
was so good at it. Yeah.
stuck, yeah, stuck in the should. And then what did you just say? You said it's not a should life, but a good
Yeah,
life.
you're pretending to live the good life, but you're living the
Good
should
life,
life.
the
And it
should
looks
life.
great on Facebook.
Oh, it's fantastic for posts, for social
Yeah.
media. Mwah, chef's kiss. Look at me doing all these amazing things. That's incredible. 17 years you've been in it. What do you wish you knew then that you know now about this realm of coaching?
I'll answer it this way. If I could tell my early coach version of David, lighten up, man. Stop taking yourself so seriously. I think that's a big piece. I mean, I spent 5 quarters overlapping between running that tech company and coaching. And so I'm in a Vistage group. I meet with these guys at least once a month. We spend a full day together, these guys and gals, and they knew I was working on working on exiting the company. We thought we were shutting it down. I ended up selling it to my partner. And lots of stuff back and forth working with them on what I needed to know and understand and guidance. Finished the sale in the middle of December. I walked back in the middle of January for our first Vistage meeting. And all I can think is, holy crap, I'm no longer part of the tech company. Now I'm a full-time coach. And I had all this head garbage, like they're going to think I'm frivolous. I'm not a business person anymore. I'm not a leader anymore. And I had all this head garbage and they were like, unbelievable. I was wrapped up in all kinds of ridiculous made up stuff in my head that was making my path harder. 95% of what made my path hard is here. And if I could have taken myself less seriously then, who knows, right?
It reminds me of one of my favorite tools that I picked up off of you, and this the question: what would make this easy?
Oh, yeah.
Michelle, you look like you had something you wanted to say there for a second.
I did. Well, you said you would tell yourself lighten up. And earlier you talked about that visceral response in your body that can feel anxious or fearful, which doesn't feel light. It tends to feel heavy, at least in my experience. So I think my question is, do you have a way or ways? How do you lighten that up when you get that feeling that feels almost impossible to make it lighter? Do you have?
Oh, David Foster Wallace has the answer.
This is water?
David Foster Wallace. Oh yeah, this is water. One of his lines is, "You'll find you care much less what other people think about you when you realize how seldom they do."
Yes.
Everybody's so wrapped up in their own shit. They're not thinking about you, but it doesn't matter. Your, third party observer, internal judge is going bananas with narrative. And I think that's where the weight, the weight of existence comes in most often is the internal narratives we allow ourselves to listen to. There's another piece from, and I think that's the first piece because it categorizes it as, oh, well, they're not really thinking about me. So all this crap that I'm listening to is made up. But then there's the other piece from holistic psychology, a fervent reminder that we are not having thoughts. Right? The human brain has 60,000 on average thoughts come up in a day. You can't process even a fraction of those. So the idea is our thoughts are coming up. We're choosing which ones to interact with. And if we don't like the ones we're interacting with, choose something else. They are not our thoughts. We are selecting them. The image I always keep in my head is I'm standing in the eye of a tornado and there's this swirl of 60,000 thoughts around me and I'm pulling one or two out and interacting with them. And again, if I don't like them, put them back. They'll be there in the swirl. And I am ultimately at choice, which means I am in full control over my experience and my happiness.
Reminds me of the trains of thought. We have different trains of thought that go by in our head. We can choose to stand and watch them go by, or we can hop on them. Then the way you said that tornado, you reminded me of ADHD a little bit, of how many thoughts are just whipping by, and how prevalent it is for ADHD to be a piece of our culture these days. And we've had these discussions before. So I remember you were diagnosed later in life with ADHD. What was that process like for you?
What was that process like? So I was in my late 30s. I'm trying to think what the impetus was to go get an actual formal diagnosis. Um, wow, that is so far back. I haven't, it's a great question because I haven't really thought about what led to the testing. I think it was, I've been navigating depression since I was a preteen. And I think it was part of the treatment for depression. One of the problems with ADHD is the ongoing annihilation of self-esteem. The constant correction, the constant failure to execute on the things you want to execute on, that can torque up the depression. And so part of the depression was very much looking at, well, what are the other comorbidities? What else is here? It's the same thing that happens a lot for people who have anxiety. It particularly with anxiety, it's super hard to know, do you will treating the ADHD mitigate the anxiety? Will treating the anxiety mitigate the ADHD? Because either one can inflame or trigger the other. So it's very rare that somebody has just one neurodivergent element. Hmm. Yeah, so I think that's where it came from, or where the idea to get a actual assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Sound like not being able to follow through on actions is a piece of. I'm actually going through that right now and seeking treatment for it, and was recently put on Wellbutrin, and then it's been the worst month of my freaking life. So it's now I'm off of it for just a few days at this particular moment, and it is coming off of it is difficult too. But I'm not even sure where I'm going with that. Just kind of sharing part of the struggle that I'm going through. Um, what
There's
has
not a
been?
simple answer for it. We don't have a Star Trek wave a little tricorder over you and have the answer of what's going to work for you. Finding the right, I mean, look, anything to do with neurochemistry, the pharmaceutical industry is going to look at, or the break fix model driven healthcare industry is going to look at it and say, ooh, well, here, try this pill. They're going to look for exogenous chemicals coming into the body rather than, hey, let's look at what the chemicals that you're already putting into your body are already there. What are you eating? What's your sleep? What's your nutrition? What's your exercise? So when we look at what the internal chemical structure is, then we can start to find what the right, if it's necessary, what the right external chemical is that will help fill those gaps. And I would love it if every time a doctor said, here, take this, right, that it was just the right one at just the right dose every single time.
It's
Medicine
trial
is
and
an educated guess.
it
Yeah.
is. It is. And someone very, very close to me, I watched them go through some of that, what can feel to some like, oh, you're being a guinea pig, basically,
Yes. Oh, it
because they
feels like that.
don't know. And so you're being thrown from medication to medication, dose to dose, impacting how you perceive life, how you perceive yourself. I mean, your
Oh, which is great for the
appetite.
self-esteem as well.
It's just, yeah. And especially if you're administering that to a child who may not be fully connected to why they're taking it, at least an adult, there's advocacy, there's autonomy, there's more a clearer path to choice.
Well, there's a better chance for that.
But what you just hit on, that when these medications are prescribed,
Wait, say it
most,
again.
when these medications are prescribed,
Mhm.
most often the traditional system doesn't take account of what's already in your system, from what the food, the supplements, the routines, it's there isn't a holistic approach.
No.
It's just a pharmaceutical, take this pill, and if not, we have 5 other pills, 3 different doses, so that's about 18 variations. Let's go.
Plus whatever else you're taking, whatever else they have to modify so you can take that one. And then, no, 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 no. Yeah.
That's true. It's much more than 18 variations. It's multiples.
And a lot of the times, the psychologist is the one that you're doing the internal work with. The psychiatrist is the one who manages the meds, and that's separate. For some reason, the psychiatrists so often are not the ones doing anything other than med checks, right? Or worse, you have your primary care physician is the one who's dealing with the psych meds, and they don't have the training that psychiatrist has, and they definitely don't have this training the psychologist has, and they have 5 to 7 minutes in the room with you anyway. It is not a great model right now.
No, it's pretty shit.
No,
I
and I
finally
think
finished the thoughts I was thinking a second ago where I was going with
good,
what
come
I
back.
started talking about. I'm moving a little bit slow today. Actually, where I was going with it is there's an experimentation process to try a little of this, try a little of that, and how true that is when we start to look at coaching and creating that life that we're looking for.
Yes.
How the experimentation process, like we're never going to figure out exactly what it is going to make for us to create a great life without a little bit of experimentation. So what does that experimentation process look like as we start to create a great life and we start to live more consciously?
Well, it depends. It depends on how you frame it. Words create worlds. I never ask somebody at the beginning of a coaching session, what do you want to work on today? People will put orders of magnitude more energy into playing with something than they will into working on something. The research on play is unbelievable. And the idea of working on creating a new life, there's nothing more sterilizing than that. It makes it feel ew. Academic, work, structures, discipline. Boy, that'll fuck something up. And it's when you are playing or playing with new routines, playing with new ideas, playing with new identity, trying things on. Oh my God, it's cosplay. You give people the opportunity to explore like a child.
Mm.
Wow. It's amazing how much more dramatic a shift in somebody's world they can create through play. Freedom. Because when you play, you can fuck it up. When you're working on something, all these companies that say innovation is in our DNA, 95% of them are lying. And I can tell because they punish failure and only reward success. In order to be innovative, you have to be willing to fail and fail a lot, right? You have to play with things and you're going to fail with most of them. Celebrating failure is how you get to success, right? So you have to play, you have to explore, you have to be messy. In order to be really good at something, you have to be willing to suck at it first. And our work environment does not encourage people to suck at anything ever. So the answer is, Lee, play, exploration, childlike curiosity, fantasy, and willingness to faceplant.
So what would you say to somebody who has the counter argument that it's irresponsible to be carefree as if we're children?
I would ask them whose voice that was in their head, because that's an inherited agreement. That's something through socialization, acculturation, education, that's something they inherited, and they may choose to keep that, but that's an unconscious rule that's running their world instead of a chosen rule that they are living their life by. And or I would be flippant and say, okay, you're dead wrong.
Maybe spank that child. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
I'm joking. For the record, I do not believe in spanking children. So I wanted to make a distinction there. Not the kids.
Yeah, that is a hard thing because I think so much of our world, I mean, I know my experience, so much of my world were the agreements, the rules that I inherited that until I unpacked them and went, what the, they were driving my choices. And left to our own devices, we're going to go for those unconscious things that are already programmed in. Our base code will run all day long until we decide to rewrite it. And it makes sense evolutionarily, but it doesn't make sense in terms of creating a life that you love.
There's so much pre-programming and default factory settings that we've been practicing for years and years and years. So then to create a new neural pathway, it's like walking a new path in a field of grass. You have to walk it many, many times for it to start appearing as a default path. And so what I find, and I've been there myself many times, and I still find myself there, and I come back to what is true, and that is you've walked that path how many years, You've been conditioned for that path for how long? So trying it 2, 3 times and it feeling clunky or unnatural or weird, that's cool. That's included. That does not signal don't go that way, come back to the factory settings. You're just walking a new path.
Being a trailblazer means you're walking through untraveled path. Starting that new neural pathway, there's no myelination on the nerve. You've got to run that. There are so many books and so much research about habit creation, and whether, the outliers are 21 days and 180 days to create a new habit. 30 to 45 is where most of the research lies. That the only way to create a new habit, whether it's a habit of behavior or a habit of thinking, doesn't matter. It's it's small actions repeated with high frequency over a duration of time. Period. It's the only equation. But when you come up to where the paths diverge, and you can take the one where you've got to bushwhack through the high grass or the trees, or the one that you've been running all along, your brain is programmed to go on the easy path.
Mm-hmm.
So we are programmed, we are built against change. Our design has us physiologically resistant to change. So we have to consciously take the road less traveled until it's the road more traveled. And that goes back to, Alina, what we were saying before about being conscious about our choices.
And yes, and cleaning the lens, cleaning the crud, which is work. It's energy. It's intention. Because otherwise it'll just sit there and we'll walk around with foggy lenses all through life.
So, Alina, I had this just in when you said that. So when I sit down in front of the camera for a coaching session or an interview, I can see the lenses. And I realize how often I sit down, see that the lenses aren't totally clear, and clean them.
Mm.
And I don't see it when I'm looking through them as well as I see it when there's a reflection back on the screen. And I think what's so cool about coaching is we are the instrument to reflect this system back to itself, whether it's an individual or a team. And where are the places that I choose to step into that reflect me back to me, right? So here it's an easy one. I've got the physical reflection back, but where are the places that we choose as people to step into that reflection space so we can choose differently?
You reminded me of like a real life scenario of somebody who's in a bad relationship, doesn't realize it, but all their friends are like, you're fucking up staying in this relationship. Like everybody on the outside can reflect back and see, and it's very obvious, but when you're too close to it, you can't see it.
Right.
And that's one of the brilliant things about coaching. It allows that reflection back and forth.
Right. Your coach may ask questions that lead you to hear the same thing your friends have been saying for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
but why don't we listen to our friends? Why? What is the filter? Usually that's fear. Are we afraid of loss? Are we afraid of being alone? Whatever it is that keeps us in the relationship, in a bad relationship, it tends to be fear-stained or fear-driven. I mean, when you drill emotions, they're really all emotions fall into 2 buckets: love or fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very rare that love keeps us in a shit relationship more than fear keeps us in a shit relationship.
How you feel about circling back around to how we started, and that's creating great relationships? What does it look like to start creating great relationships whenever you've started to decide that's what you want?
It's funny, Elaine and I, like I said, my wife and I have been married for 33 years. Although we were married on leap day, so we've only had 8 anniversaries. But one of the things we talk about is marriage is the hardest work you'll do every day. But if you do it every day, it's not that hard. And I think, like, even in the time we've been together, and we've known each other since we were 11. Well, she was 12. But the times we've gotten so caught up in our world that we've lost the daily work. Like we're doing couples therapy right now, and it's amazing. It's like deepening the relationship and bringing our attention to the stuff we don't talk about and don't work on, right? Yeah, by the way, just because you're a coach doesn't mean you're really good at coaching yourself.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I think it's committing to doing the work, yours and ours. Because if you've got somebody in the relationship that's not doing their work and it makes it harder to do our work, or if you're just doing our work and nobody's doing their own work, that makes it really hard to do the real work, right? Um, the couples therapist talked about something fascinating. It's the real work of a relationship is becoming an expert in your partner, knowing what the things are that move them and scar them. And God, the concept that she shared with us was just wild. The phrase she used was the bite that fits the wound. And I'll give you an example. Regardless of what the therapeutic answer would be of what happened in my world that has me go into a shame and guilt spiral when I'm challenged. That's where the unwritten rules and stuff have me go. My my brain left on its own train track will just race to guilt and shame, right? And there are certain things that or ways that Elaine can ask me a question that'll just trigger that spiral, right? My work is to catch it before it spirals out of control because it has nothing to do with her. It's all me on that one. But what she says or how she says it is the bite that fits the wound I've already got. And so when she's not aware of that, and those teeth hit right into that wound, it's like, damn. So it's fascinating. The better we are at knowing the other person, the less often we put out a bite that fits the other person's wound. Because it's amazing when you trigger somebody else's shit and you had nothing to do with what's being triggered. Boy, that can have a cascade impact on the relationship.
Absolutely. It's you're talking about shame and guilt. And I keep Lee and Michelle have seen me pull this up. I keep this posted on my desk, and the writing is now bleached out by the sun, but it says dusty corners of shame and guilt. And it's a reminder for me to look at my own dusty corners of shame and guilt so that I'm not like, yes, you're keeping the center of the room clean. So the optics are great, but are you actually minding the corners and the cracks and crevices? So it's my check-in all the time.
Oh,
It's powerful. What's that?
no, that's right up there in the fuck you, thank you category. It's like, fuck you. Oh, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Right? Like that first defense. I think of it like a control panel. Like if
Yeah.
I have arguments with one of my kids, well, disagreement, whatever it is, and they open up like the secret combination of like, it's my combo and only they know it.
Yep.
Boop, boop, boop. And they activate it. And here I am. And my first response, if it was a knee jerk response, would be to like blow a gasket. And then there's a check in. Like, yep, that's what happened. Door activated, entered. Now you have a choice. What choice do you want to make?
Right. What choice do you want to make?
And it's like, okay, what's going to be helpful?
There is no single point in a relationship where you taking 60 seconds to breathe won't serve the relationship. I don't mean you, I mean all of us.
All of us.
Just breathe, especially with kids. My God, their teeth just fit into that wound. It's like whatever reaction to parent they have just seems to just set me up, right?
That's it. I love like the bite and the wound. It's a very different language. It's the same concept of oh, you've got the security, you've got the combo, you've got the code that no one else has.
No one else has, but
And
keep the
you could act.
relationship just between you two. It's clean.
Yes.
Leave out the generational stuff. Leave out all the other stories and
Well,
just relate.
I mean,
Just wave it off like it's nothing, right?
I call it a trauma Napoleon, like Napoleon cake.
Let me put my hand in. Yeah.
What's that?
I said, let me just put my hand like Napoleon.
Right. Well, you're wearing the royal blue.
I know. It is that the generational trauma. And I mean, that's such a buzz right now, but it's so much more because there are pieces of each of us that carry the trauma and pieces that don't. And I think integrating all the bits of us and making them all okay and not leave from some of the work that we've been part of, not voting a piece of you off the island. Our mentor Ken says any part of the self denied is the self denied. And so if you're fracturing yourself by saying, "Ooh, there's this piece of me I don't like, I'm just going to push it away," you're fracturing yourself. And until we're whole, we're not clean. We're not in a good relationship with ourselves.
We had Ken on last week, so he's going to air right before you do. There's something that really has been sticking out to me about what you were saying a while ago, knowing your partner very well so you don't bite the wound. That could be a fine distinction between taking responsibility for somebody else's feelings versus taking responsibility for the impact you create. How responsible do you want to be for somebody else's feelings?
Well, I can't be responsible for their feelings because that puts me out of integrity in the relationship. I can be respondable instead of responsible and match my response to where our values are and what are the design of the relationship. But I can't be responsible for anything over which I have zero control. I have some influence, mostly in the trigger land, but I don't have authority or dominion, right? I can be responsible for being in integrity here and being kind and in sync with the rules of the relationship. And I can't even be, can I be responsible for my unintended impact? Yeah, I can be responsible for my impact. But once the damage is done, then it has to be a bid and healing. Being with what's important in the moment and not like, would I rather be right or in relationship?
Mm-hmm.
We'll say that the first decade or so, I wanted to be fucking right. Right. So that was getting to the point, would I rather be in relationship or would I rather be right? And that's a big one with kids. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Oh,
Expand on that right versus relationship.
In an effort to make sure the other person in the relationship knows that my feelings are right or my opinion is right or the way I think it should go is right, I can damage the relationship. More important is the connection. With kids, if they feel safe and tended to and heard, it changes the way. There always going to be resistance between a parent and a child because part of their development is individuation. That's what they have to do. They have to individuate if they're ever going to get out of the house and have a life, right? But if they don't feel safe, they're going to try to push back and individuate with everything. And that can damage their relationship irreparably, as opposed to letting them know they're safe and loved no matter what they do and who they are, right? And then the learning can come in that safe space rather than, you fucked up, you're completely wrong. Because it's hard for a kid to differentiate between I did something wrong, which is guilt, and I am wrong, which is I have shame. And that's where the guilt and shame spiral starts. That's where the tendency starts. If you teach them they're always good, even if they've done something wrong, then it lets them understand the delineation between guilt and shame, and that will save them millions of dollars in therapy.
It's oh God, I like live this every day, just about every day of that challenge with at home is we can have our senses about us and our knowing, and then we come to the people closest to us and that knowledge is set aside and sometimes overshadowed by all the humanity, which is why people need people and therapists need therapists, coaches need coaches, and we need those people in our lives to help us clean that lens and call us out on our own bullshit. And I'm thinking about, the safety that we're talking about. And that safety is such a key in working with adults as well, right? Like I'm working with a client now where they're founders and they're in conflict, but they haven't talked about the conflict, but they've alluded and danced around the conflict. So they're doing this dance and expending all this energy on the dance, like the cha-cha, the samba, tap
Yeah, but
dance.
they don't have psychological safety, so they're dancing instead.
So they're dancing instead, and that's a lot of time and energy spent on that dance. But the problem is they're not looking to be professional dancers. Like they're building a company. So
Right. They're
that's
looking to
what,
be right, not in relationship. And
that's
from
it.
relationship, they can figure out right.
That's it. Every time it's as it is with children. I mean, it's all humanity. It's just the structure of humanity is you're not going to be able to find that innovative solution with someone that you work with if they're feeling unsafe and triggered by you. If you're threatening something.
When we're adults and we don't feel safe, we act like children. And it's right, scared, threatened. It doesn't usually bring us to our higher brain function.
No, it goes very much into our lizard brain.
I am
And
not at my best in my lizard brain. I am not.
well, that's the evolutionary, right? I liken it to animals. And so you get into our basic instinctual place and we bite or we sting or we run.
But it's very rare that we have an actual saber-toothed tiger around the corner.
That's right.
But we behave like that all day long. We have very few times in our entire life where we're in an existential threat situation. But our brain still acts as if the person who just said something snarky at the water cooler is an existential threat. Okay, so here's the real buzzkill. As long as we were playing with neuroscience before, here's the buzzkill of our design. When we have something positive or a connection happen, the oxytocin surges in our body, the feel-good happy hormone. The residual effect of oxytocin in the system is 30 to 60 seconds. Cortisol, the stress hormone, when we're threatened, so somebody says something snarky at the water cooler or on Zoom, the residual effect of that surge of cortisol in the body is 24 to 36 hours. So we get that surge, and the next day we're still in that surge state. Now, it may diminish some, but it still has a lingering effect. So the more we feel or our brain tells us we're threatened, the more it just keeps going in that cascade. It's not fair, but evolutionarily it made sense.
Right. It's not about fairness. It's just about how we're made. And that's what do we do? How do we keep establishing and reestablishing safety over and over and over to keep that saber-toothed tiger where it belongs for the life and death issues and not catastrophizing?
Well, and then how do we learn to create psychological safety in the space of the relationship, whether it's a business partnership, a parenting relationship, or a relationship partner? Like, how do we learn to create that psychological safety with and for our partner? By the way, Lee, that's back to that, am I responsible for my partner's emotions? Well, no. But if I know how to create psychological safety, then I create an environment where their reactions can be where they want them to be.
If we're talking about, well, how do we, and it's not a rhetorical question, it feels like establishing that safety within ourselves first is where we start. And once we have established safety within, we can then consider without.
Or as we work on creating safety
Yes.
within. I mean, if we wait till we're 100%.
No, we'll be dead.
But yeah, I like that. Everything starts from within. Right? If you can't
Every time.
fractured connection with yourself, it's really hard to connect with somebody else. So I guess, everything really does start here. That's the work.
Every time. So it's like pointing fingers and blame and shame and you did this. Like what's happening for you? What's your part of
When
it?
you point fingers at someone else, three of them are pointing back at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned cortisol. It took me back to my nutritional coaching days and how one of the things that they teach is insulin as a way to deal with that cortisol response. So that's why we end up binge eating when we're overstressed, because that binge eating sets off a massive dose of insulin. It helps to deal with that cortisol. And the reason I'm saying that is because whenever we're constantly drenched in cortisol, our body automatically ends up going to these numbing and coping mechanisms that aren't exactly helpful. It could be eating, could be drinking, drugs, sex, all the different things that we do to numb ourselves and to avoid whatever it is that has set off our nervous system. How often do you deal with the numbing and the avoiding?
So a lot of my clients also have ADHD,
Mm,
and we are stimulation seekers. And a lot of what we see in those situations is, and the list you just gave is perfect. It's not just the chemical, whether it's food, drugs, or alcohol, it's the risky behavior,
mm-hmm.
right? Jumping out of airplanes, gambling, infidelities. There are lots of ways that people act out seeking stimulation. And the more stimulation they seek, the particularly the more physical stimulation, the more they're going to seek it because the threshold raises. So there, it's kind of a vicious cycle. And until we recalibrate where the stimulation comes from and what serves the relationship rather than what just beats down the self-esteem and external connection, the cascade is just going to continue in external stimulation seeking. And we see that a lot. The challenge we have with the way, gross generalization, our North America deals with addiction is we stop them from using and then kick them back out in the field to go experiment as a sober person, and then they relapse and then come back and relapse and come back, which is a great business model for the treatment centers. The reason there's the relapse rate is so egregiously high is somewhere on the order of 70 to 80% of those folks in addiction treatment have untreated, undiagnosed ADHD. Because it's stimulation seeking, they're going to go right back out and seek stimulation. And the easiest way to get it is the bottle they crawled out of, or the gambling, or the sex addiction, whatever it was that brought them in.
Wow. Does anybody else know this?
Yeah, there's more and more research that's showing it, and there are a few places that are actually working on that as well. Up until 5 years ago, I think it was when the DSM-5 came out, when you went into treatment, if you were on ADD meds, AA had you come off the stimulant because nothing goes in your body, which is fucked up.
Mm,
It makes it much harder for them to navigate what they're going through. Right now, you can stay on your psych meds. For some of the treatment centers, some of the rehab centers, it's still a crapshoot. But there are more and more places that understand that we have to work with the neurochemistry of the actual brain they have, and not just the 12-step process that says this is how you do it.
That's stunning. Just how much suffering this missing piece of information has caused people.
Oh,
Staggering.
Russell Barkley, who's one of the leading researchers and thought leaders on ADHD, for the last 10 years, he's been saying that ADHD needs to be a public health crisis because the life expectancy for somebody with ADHD is 7 to 10 years less than somebody neurotypical.
I can see that.
That's a long fucking time. 7 to 10 years.
Really is a crisis.
It is a crisis. I mean, we tend not to be really good at follow through. So our compliance post care or post any health issue is very, very low, and that diminishes. The stimulation seeking, the risk taking, there are all kinds of reasons. And most of it comes down to too many people don't understand ADHD, especially the people who have it, second only to the people who treat it.
Well, that was a mic drop. There's been a bunch from you, but holy shit. Second to the people who treat it.
Some of the work we're doing right now is teaching neuro-informed coaching, helping coaches better understand the difference between neurodivergent and neurotypical. Because if you walk into a space coaching somebody who's neurodivergent and you treat them as if they're neurotypical, it's actually what we believe it's an ethical breach because you are doing actual damage to their self-esteem by expecting the same sort of functionality, follow through. The same tools don't work. You actually coach them differently because their brains work differently. It's like you can't coach somebody who's autistic the same way you coach somebody who's neurotypical. Coaching somebody with PTSD. So neurodivergence physically is a physical brain difference. And their world is very different. So when you don't understand where they're coming from, 40+% of the population, then you are not meeting them where they are, which is one of the core tenets of coaching. You meet your client where they are. You don't have to be able to diagnose them, have to understand the distinction between neurotypical and neurodivergent and how that's different in coaching.
It's absolutely critical. And some of my clients have ADHD, some are on the spectrum. And it's really, it's wild, like shoring up resources and educating myself in between sessions to figure out how to best serve them. It's so important. Mind blown.
Yeah, in December, Richard Branson launched Dyslexic University. It's teaching neurotypicals how to harness the same thinking that dyslexics have and to better function in the workplace, right? It's literally bringing that neurotype's skills to folks who don't have that wiring. And it's a great idea. There are more and more companies that have coaches internally and seek to hire folks that are neurodivergent, right? The number of engineers that are on the spectrum, right? The number of folks in the creative departments that are ADHD and in skunk works, in the R&D groups. It is amazing how many neurodivergents are being sought after by companies because it brings something different to their thinking pool.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're bringing them in, why aren't we coaching them? Right. So that, I mean, it's neuro-informed leadership and neuro-informed coaching are really, along with AI, the two big fronts in coaching and leadership.
What's on your brain over there, Michelle?
Oh, I mean, I'm fascinated by this whole conversation, but I am like chewing on the inner child, the bite that fits the wound, and the co-creation of the relationship and the individuals, whether it be a marriage, a partnership, founders coming together. My brain is just in all these places, and I just keep seeing an inner child and a saber-toothed tiger and wondering if they're not the same thing. Like they create the same response within us. You know? What are
He's
you
my
holding
little
up?
guy on my desk, so I always have him a reminder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I just think it's fascinating. Like the bite that fits the wound, when you say that, like I can see it. And
mhm,
I think about, so if you have a partner capable of creating a safe space for that wound to exist with the air hitting it without it like spiraling out of control, can we then heal whatever it is within? Typically, I tend to go to inner child. Like, what ages did you not have something that you desperately needed that created these patterns and these, conditioning and programming and process and habits that we have? And I think how beautiful to have a partner who can hold space for that. And then also recognizing and realizing that you have your own accountability to do your own work. And you also like there's a necessity to create your own safe space. Like, isn't that the goal of healing the wound, is to create your inner sanctuary, to become the vacation space versus the wounded place? I don't know. That my brain went all over the place in that. And I find all of this really fascinating. I just wonder how much. I think that's why our children point to so much within us. That's why they can trigger so many things. It's because like they're going, "Hey, I see that inner child in you, and you haven't looked in that in a while, and here we are." And obviously, I mean, my coaching style or healing style is different than the trainings that you all had. And then every time we have these conversations, I'm like, "Yes, and." It's just different. And we're all doing, like, we're pointing to the same things and ultimately looking for our own sanctuaries within not only our internal world, but then that ripples out into the external world. And it's a beautiful thing when you can do that with your family. Like when you described your family at the beginning, David, I was like, oh, wow, that's it. Like, isn't like as a parent, as I also have two grown men and we still talk, we hang out, we have beautiful relationships, and they're very punny men. They like to make puns and we have fun.
raise them well.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just where my brain is. That was a bit messy, but I'm messy in this whole inner child saber-toothed tiger thing because I'm like, I feel like sometimes when that inner child gets alert, they feel like a saber-toothed tiger within us. And like I had a weekend the other weekend where I was in a wound and I was like, I feel like a caged animal, but I'm aware of it so I can show up differently within that and hold space for myself, but also make my partner aware that I feel like a caged animal. So proceed with compassion, please. You know?
It's also holding space for that caged animal because there's something in there to pay attention to. And I think
Yes.
one of the hardest parts for me was, ooh, when that anger starts coming up or when that sadness starts coming up, I just want to, I've recognized them. Ta-da, they're here. Now put them away.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the work. Oh, I've identified it. Yay for me. No, 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 no. It's welcoming it in and not making it wrong and not making it terrible or icky or hard. It's just here.
Mhm.
And I think the gift in just, oh, it's just here. It's just part of me. And that's the reason I keep that little man, that little boy on my desk, because it's he didn't care about that stuff when it came up. That stuff came up, it was just part. It was part of the whole experience, the full range of emotion. There weren't rules as is that good or bad. It just is. And wow, how cool it would be to be unflappable. Have the vagal tone where when emotions come up, it's just like, yay, they're here. What do I get to experience now? Right? I mean, look, that little kid celebrated everything.
Yeah.
Like not peeing on the seat was great. Right. And we don't enjoy everything that happens in our world right now because we vote on it. Like, I'm going to stop voting on stuff and just hold it all. Right? Just hold it. Even if it feels like a tiger at first.
Yeah, let's get that sucker to purr.
Yeah.
That actually feels like a beautiful, beautiful place to wrap up. Any last words before we call it a day?
Yeah, don't take yourself so fucking seriously. That is still the best advice in my world. Like,
Mhm,
I am amazed at how hard we make things by making everything so serious.
mhm.
Right? Don't be flippant. Just fucking have fun.
The brilliance lies in the simplicity.
Yeah, what will this look like when it's easy? I promise you, having the internal judge going nuts and listening to every word as truth is not what it will look like when it's easy. I've tried it, it's not it.
That's for sure. What a
But
treat.
Oh, yeah, this has
thoughts,
been fun. I have no
thoughts
idea how
of,
long we've been on. This has been lovely.
yeah,
Delightful. Delightful.
been a ton of fun. Yeah, the way you said that a second ago was like, yep, been there, done that. Don't recommend.
Yeah, 0 stars, not recommended.
Yeah, 0 out of 10.
Man. Well, thanks a ton for being on. I'm going to go ahead and hit the Buton.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to That's a Great Point with Alina Doran, Michelle Albers, and Lee Smart. To find out more about how we can serve you, check out our links in the show description. Thanks for playing along.